getting divorced. She went on Twitter cussing out Diddy and then deleted it because Diddy want to throw Dwayne a divorce freak off.
Sean Combs' most heartbreaking moment didn't come from a judge's ruling or a prison sentence. It came when his own daughters ran out of the courtroom in tears. Witnesses said they looked completely shattered, trying to keep it together while the whole room gasped like something explosive had just dropped. The trial was meant to be about accountability, maybe even a bit of closure, until everything flipped in an instant. People inside said the moment his daughters couldn't sit still anymore, everyone knew something hit deep. Sources who were there revealed it wasn't about hearing new accusations. It was about recognition. Those voices, those exact details, those patterns, they matched stories that had been whispered for years, stories that most had brushed off and the jury still tossed aside on the biggest charges. Then came the testimony, the part that froze the entire courtroom. Prosecutors played a recording while Combs sat stone-faced as a man described being pushed to keep going during a disturbing warehouse encounter, surrounded by designer clothes and luxury gear. The scene was straight out of a nightmare, and the numbers, they stunned everyone. Investigators found hundreds of bottles of baby oil, more than 100 lawsuits were still active, and one shocking $20 million settlement had been paid off in just a single day. The kind of stuff that makes people wonder what's really been going on behind the spotlight. The jury might have called the whole situation toxic but consensual, yet his own kids couldn't even sit through the verdict. That moment said way more than any judge ever could, because the real punishment isn't about years behind bars. It's about watching the people you love lose all faith in you right in front of everyone. This is the same man who built an image of luxury, family, and loyalty, while the allegations painted a picture that couldn't be further from the glossy photos he sold to the world. Insiders say hotel staff were straight up paid to erase damaging footage, and that's just what's already slipped into the public eye. But the whispers don't stop there. People keep talking about recordings that no major outlet has dared to drop yet, the kind that could change everything if they ever hit the light of day. And when Jesse Combs and Delilah Combs stood up in that Manhattan courtroom and walked out right in the middle of testimony, the whole vibe shifted. In that moment, it stopped being only about Sean Combs. It became about something way deeper. The cracks spreading through his final shield of protection, his own family. People inside that courtroom swear this wasn't some staged scene for attention, not even close. Witnesses said the twins didn't just walk out calmly, they bolted from their seats, hands over their mouths, eyes wide open, completely shaken like they'd just seen something that cut deep. It was raw, it was real, and it all went down at a very specific moment during Daniel Phillips' testimony. Phillips, the man once close to Combs, took the stand and described what he claimed were freak-offs. Those wild, extended encounters where women were allegedly pressured into intimate situations with paid partners while Combs supposedly watched, directed, and sometimes even filmed it. The whole courtroom went dead silent as those words dropped. What made that moment hit even harder was that Combs' daughters had already sat through weeks of graphic, uncomfortable testimony without flinching, until this. This was the point their composure shattered, and that's where things started to look shaky for the defense, because if everything was just toxic but consensual, like they argued, then why did his own daughters react like they just witnessed something unbearable? And here's the part that left everyone scratching their heads. Even after all that, the jury still cleared him of the racketeering charges. Those were the big ones, the charges that could have meant life behind bars. The verdict, handed down in July 2025, was a strange mix, a split decision after 8 intense weeks of testimony. Combs was convicted on 2 counts connected to transporting individuals across state lines for private encounters, each carrying possible prison time. But the jury rejected the larger racketeering and trafficking claims, leaving everyone stunned, confused, and wondering what it really takes for the truth to stick in a case like this. Prosecutors came in hard, arguing that Sean Combs wasn't just caught up in wild behavior. They claimed he ran a whole network built to make those events happen. They painted a picture of staff, assistants, and security all playing a part, using his resources to keep everything running smooth and secret. But the jury didn't fully buy it. They decided the evidence didn't hit the mark for what legally counts as an organized criminal operation. Legal experts later said the jury's biggest struggle came down to one question. Did Combs knowingly run an operation where his own people understood exactly what was going on? That one detail split the room. When you strip away the legal jargon, the message was clear. The jury believed the women. They believed Cassie Ventura's decade-long story of abuse. They believed the companion's descriptions of being pressured, and they even believed hotel workers who swore they were paid off to make surveillance footage vanish. But still, they stopped short of calling it organized crime. And that's where things get messy. Because if it wasn't coordinated, then how do you explain what investigators found? We're talking hundreds of bottles of baby oil, nearly 1,000 containers of intimate lubricants scattered across multiple mansions. All that can't just be coincidence. And what about the claim that a hotel security guard got 6 figures to delete footage showing Combs allegedly striking Cassie in a hallway? Court documents even said these incidents followed a rigid pattern, so detailed and repetitive that multiple witnesses described it as the same routine, over and over again, something that sounds way too structured to be random. Routine or not, then came the moment everyone had been waiting for: sentencing. Sean Combs got hit with 50 months behind bars, the maximum allowed for what he was convicted of, but still way less than what prosecutors wanted. Judge Aaron Subramanian called it a significant sentence, meant to send a message, but not everyone saw it that way. To a lot of people, this wasn't about deterrence. It was the system's final shot at someone who'd spent decades skating past real consequences. In a letter to the court, Combs wrote, "I lost my way. My downfall was rooted in my selfishness." But the words felt polished, almost scripted, like something meant to soften the blow rather than show true remorse. Meanwhile, Cassie Ventura's statement hit hard. She told the court she still feared swift retaliation if Combs ever walked free. And she wasn't just worried for herself, but for everyone else brave enough to speak up. That fear didn't come out of nowhere. Back in 2023, Combs settled Cassie's lawsuit for a staggering $20 million, and he did it in under 24 hours. To many, that move screamed damage control, not accountability. People saw it as a way to silence the storm, not to make things right. Now that the verdict's official, the real question isn't whether Sean Combs might strike back. It's who's still standing to shield the people who could end up in his path. The courtroom doors might have closed, but the fallout, that's just getting started. The real destruction didn't come from the courtroom verdict. It came right after, from what stopped happening. Sean Combs' empire, once untouchable, started crumbling piece by piece. Bad Boy Records, the flashy drink partnerships, the endless endorsements, all built on the image of a self-made mogul who had escaped his past.
I'm talking about like when you fall flat on your back, but I tried to do to play it off. You know how when you fall and you act like there ain't nobody seeing, you just keep on rocking? But it was like, I just felt, I was embarrassed for like weeks.
It truly is about the Benjamin, as we see.
Oh, yes, he's glittering.
It truly is about the Benjamin.
Well, now, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Puffy, and if you want to hang out, more than welcome to stick around, my brother.
But the second his twin daughters stormed out of that courtroom, everything began falling apart right in front of everyone. Inside sources say chaos hit fast. Employees tied to TriStar Sports and Entertainment started complaining that paychecks were late or never showed up at all. Lawyers handling his pile of civil cases reportedly went unpaid for weeks. And one staff member allegedly quit on the spot after the family tried to organize a dinner before sentencing, only to be told that every expense now had to go through a formal invoice. Just like any outside vendor, this was a man who used to move millions with a single phone call. And now, even the people closest to him treat him like a financial liability. The trust was gone, the money was freezing up, and his so-called empire was showing cracks everywhere. And then came the big hit. Federal agents raided his massive mansion in Holmby Hills in March 2024. The place, complete with a grotto-style pool and private studio, was searched top to bottom. Reports claimed investigators found suspicious substances, weapon components, and piles of intimate products. The kind of discovery that made headlines and confirmed the fall of Sean Combs wasn't just legal, it was personal, financial, and total. That mansion sat on the market for over a year with a jaw-dropping $61.5 million price tag before it suddenly disappeared from listings in December. Nobody wanted to touch it, because who's really lining up to buy a house tied to the same private arrangements that ended in convictions? Especially when the neighbors are names like Jennifer Lopez and Kylie Jenner. Now, that once glamorous property sits in total silence, and that silence screams louder than anything said in court. But here's where things turn chilling. There's still a part of this story no one seems willing to dig into. Everyone keeps bringing up the basement, the one that federal agents reportedly didn't fully explore. Investigators logged what they could, Strange substances, weapon parts, and stacks of intimate products. But former staffers keep whispering about something deeper. They claim there's a lower level, soundproof rooms that were never properly searched. And now that the property's been quietly pulled from the market, a new question hangs in the air. What's really down there, and who's making sure it stays hidden? Because if agents miss something during the first sweep, then somebody out there has a powerful reason to keep it from ever seeing daylight. And let's be real, anyone handling that kind of cleanup isn't doing it out of loyalty. They're doing it for protection or pay. Then came the bombshell that reignited everything. The Netflix documentary. Sean Combs' The Reckoning dropped in December and hit like a cultural explosion. Executive produced by none other than 50 Cent, one of Combs' oldest rivals, the series claimed to feature legally obtained footage from the days leading up to his arrest. In one clip, Combs is reportedly heard telling his lawyer, "We have to find somebody who will work with us." That single line shook viewers and left everyone wondering just how deep the cover-up really goes. The documentary didn't just retell the trial, it blew it wide open. Sean Combs' The Reckoning went way beyond the courtroom, digging into darker, long-rumored connections that left viewers stunned. It directly tied Combs to the unsolved deaths of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., leaning heavy on leaked police files, exclusive interviews, and those shadowy claims that have circled hip-hop for decades. One of the most jaw-dropping moments focused on Dwayne Keith Davis, the same man who, back in a 2009 police interview, claimed that Combs allegedly offered money connected to Tupac's murder. Combs has always denied this, every single time, but the documentary didn't let that slide. It lined up the timeline, the names, the phone calls, everything that makes you wonder if those unresolved questions ever really went away. And here's what made the timing insane. This documentary dropped while Combs was already behind bars. His daughters faced nonstop online harassment, and his sons, they reportedly scrambled to film a response series for Zeus Network, trying to defend their family's name before it got completely buried. This isn't just a courtroom battle anymore. It's a public takedown happening live, and it's brutal. But the bigger question lingers. If the jury rejected the racketeering claims, what happens when the court of public opinion keeps digging anyway? Why are people who've never even met Sean Combs acting like they know his every move? Inside Fort Dix prison, the reaction said it all. Inmates cheered, not just because a celebrity had fallen, but because they recognized the pattern. To them, this wasn't about fame. It was about someone who played by a certain street code and finally got called on it. Meanwhile, online, the firestorm raged just as fierce. Memes flooded every platform, mocking the Combs twins and twisting their last name into a symbol of everything their father stood for. Social media wasn't just gossip, it was a message, a cold reminder that their father's choices now follow them, whether they asked for that burden or not. And to make it worse, reports say even Combs' own legal team has been struggling to get paid. And that's not just about missing checks. It's a clear sign that his empire's collapse might be deeper than anyone thought. It's starting to sound like an empire finally realizing the vault's been drained dry. This isn't a collapse unfolding in the courtroom anymore. It's happening quietly, behind closed doors, in real time. The signs are everywhere if you look close enough. Deleted Instagram comments that vanish minutes after posting, phone calls from old industry allies that go unanswered, and a so-called defense documentary trailer from his sons that feels more like a goodbye than a comeback. But the most shocking twist came from where Sean Combs probably thought he was still safe, his own family. Christian Combs and Justin Combs announced their own docu-series this past December, scheduled for release in 2026. The trailer hits hard. It opens with them sitting in total silence, watching trial footage on screen before answering a collect call from their father behind bars. It's tense, it's emotional, and it feels like the first time the family's letting the world peek behind the curtain. They say the project is meant to reframe the story, shining a light on Combs' legacy, his influence on hip-hop, his charity work, and his image as a father. But the public's reaction has been icy, because people aren't swayed by PR anymore. They judge by what's real, by the actions, the fallout, and who's still standing when the chaos dies down. And right now, Sean Combs sits in a federal cell while the world keeps spinning without him. But here's the thing, the world isn't really moving on because those mysterious tapes are still out there, the ones nobody's seen in full. Former employees are rumored to still have copies, recordings that could explain everything. Why his daughters ran from the courtroom, why the jury hesitated to go further, and why parts of that mansion stayed sealed off and unsearched. And if 50 Cent gets his way, those tapes won't stay buried forever. They might just be the final blow that ends what's left of the Combs legacy. The real question isn't if those tapes or secrets come out, it's what happens when they finally do. Because if this trial proved anything, it's that the legal system only goes so far. Public judgment, that's a whole different kind of courtroom, one that never closes and never forgets. And one location keeps coming up in those quiet behind-the-scenes conversations, a warehouse in Los Angeles. It's tied to allegations from an ongoing civil lawsuit, and insiders swear it's not just another random backdrop. Sources familiar with the claims describe it as a strange, almost sacred space, filled with racks of old designer clothes from Combs' past, including items connected to the notorious B.I.G. But these weren't treated like keepsakes, they were treated like symbols. According to the lawsuit, one of the most unsettling incidents allegedly happened right there, and it involved an item directly associated with Biggie himself. The date? September 2020. That detail hits hard because it came long after the public was told all that disturbing behavior had ended, which raises the question, did it really stop or did it just go underground? This isn't just about shock value anymore, it's about intent. The allegation paints a picture of power and control, of someone willing to cross any boundary just to prove they could. And that's where the story takes a darker turn, because it forces everyone to ask what they've been avoiding from the start. If someone could disrespect the legacy of a man who's gone, what does that say about how they treated the people still here? Because if this wasn't just one twisted moment, if that warehouse was part of a larger pattern, then everything we've heard so far shifts completely. The pattern doesn't end at the warehouse. It might have just started there. This story doesn't just start with a trial, it stretches decades back, all the way to the early 1990s, when Sean Combs was rising fast, building bad boy records and earning a reputation as the ultimate kingmaker. But behind the luxury, the power, and the record-breaking hits, cracks started forming early. The first one showed up in 1994 at Quad Recording Studios, where Tupac Shakur was ambushed, robbed, and shot multiple times. Tupac later said in interviews that he believed Combs had a hand in what happened, even claiming he had proof, but chose not to make it public. That single statement sparked decades of whispers. And then, fast forward to 2024, and those same suspicions came roaring back. Dwayne Keith Davis, the man now charged in Tupac's killing, told police in a leaked interview that Combs allegedly offered him $1 million to handle the situation. The claim exploded again when Netflix dropped it straight into the spotlight in their explosive documentary.
About the documentary, man, it was just old news, and they took a couple of with the footage from Puff from the days that's leading up him to get arrested, and the incidents with the people from the courts, you know, the two people from the courts. So it was nothing new.
Now, the question isn't just whether Combs was involved, it's whether this was all part of something bigger. Because when you really study how he allegedly operated, the pattern feels way too familiar. Access was currency, loyalty got rewarded, and silence, it was bought or enforced through fear and financial pressure. Former staff have described those legendary parties as anything but casual. They say they were tightly controlled environments, every move choreographed, every guest list curated, every rule unspoken but crystal clear. One person decided who got in, who was sent out, and who gained from staying close. That kind of structure didn't just define his parties, it defined his whole empire. And even though the racketeering charges didn't stick, legal experts say it's not because the system didn't see the pattern, it's because proving that everyone around him knew was nearly impossible. In Combs' world, you didn't need written orders or explicit instructions. The rules were already understood. People in Sean Combs' world didn't need a rule book. They learned by watching what happened to anyone who stepped out of line. Makeup artists, security guards, assistants, the ones accused of helping didn't need full explanations. They caught on fast that asking questions wasn't encouraged. It was dangerous. And that kind of control didn't just run through his businesses, it reached right into his family life. Now, his sons are racing to put together a documentary meant to rewrite the story, while his daughters barely post online, limiting comments just to protect themselves from constant harassment. This isn't just a family feeling pressure. It's a whole system of control cracking apart in real time, and everyone's watching it unravel. Then there's the industry's reaction, or honestly, the complete lack of one. Where are the statements from all the artists he launched? The collaborators who made millions off his name? The executives who smiled for years while looking the other way? That silence isn't random. In hip-hop, loyalty isn't just about respect, it's about survival. And right now, survival means pretending none of this is happening. But the truth doesn't disappear. The internet doesn't forget, the recordings don't fade, and the people who were hurt aren't staying quiet anymore. Cassie Ventura's lawsuit might have been settled in under 24 hours, but she still took the stand, and that spoke volumes. The men who testified about those alleged freak-offs didn't just drop rumors, they gave details, names, locations, and times that lined up with years of whispers. And those hotel employees who claimed they were paid off to erase surveillance footage, they might turn out to be the voices that change everything, because they weren't insiders chasing clout. They were ordinary workers who saw too much, and now, for the first time, they're realizing silence isn't required anymore. And speaking up might be the only way to finally set things right. The silence didn't last. It never does. Weeks after the courtroom closed and the cameras moved on, the story came roaring back to life in the most unexpected way. A short clip leaked online, barely 30 seconds long, showing what looked like surveillance footage from inside one of Combs' private warehouses. It spread like wildfire before anyone could take it down. Grainy, eerie, and time-stamped months before the arrest. Within hours, the industry went into panic mode. PR teams scrambled, old collaborators went ghost, and the people who once called him family started quietly deleting every trace of him from their pages. Labels launched internal audits, producers canceled projects, and promoters started whispering that this might be bigger than anyone realized. What made it worse? The voice in the clip. Muffled, hard to hear, but distinct enough that fans swore it sounded like Combs himself. Analysts broke down every second, comparing vocal tones, speech patterns, even background noise, trying to confirm what nobody wanted to believe. Then, one by one, former insiders began to speak. A driver, a studio runner, a longtime stylist, each sharing small, sharp pieces that started connecting dots people didn't even know existed. They weren't out for clout. They sounded scared, like they knew something deeper was still buried. The leaks didn't stop there. A folder labeled Dayroom Files surfaced on Reddit, filled with blurred images and alleged emails linking back to one of Combs' former production offices. It's still unclear who dropped it. Some say it was a whistleblower, others swear it was someone inside trying to make a deal, but one thing's clear. This isn't over. The trial might have ended, but the exposure has only just begun, because every new leak, every deleted post, every nervous industry move points to one truth everyone's starting to admit. This story isn't collapsing, it's unraveling, and what's hiding underneath might change how an entire generation remembers Sean Combs. That's where the real pressure begins. Not from a courtroom, but from a story being rewritten in real time by the people who were actually there. The look on his daughter's faces that day wasn't just shock, it was recognition. The jury clearing him on the biggest charges didn't feel like justice. It felt like proof that power still bends the system. Now, the very people who once stayed silent are stepping forward, not just with lawsuits, but with firsthand stories that flip the whole narrative. For years, one man controlled what the world heard. Now, it's the insiders, the witnesses, the ones who saw everything when the cameras were off. They're the ones shaping how history remembers this. Even the Holmby Hills mansion stands as a symbol, a place with rooms that might still hold secrets. Federal agents took what they could, but that basement, it's still the mystery no one wants to touch. And the more people try to hide it, the louder the whispers get. Because in this era, nothing stays buried. Not footage, not witnesses, not the truth. What makes this story so haunting isn't just one allegation. It's how every piece fits together. The 1994 shooting, the Tupac rumors, the warehouse stories, and that moment his daughters broke down in court. All of it points in one direction. Power used as control, silence bought at a price. The legal battle might be over, but the fallout is still spreading. The Netflix documentary painted a darker picture than any defense ever could. And those unseen tapes, they're still out there, waiting to surface. So now it's your turn. Do you think the truth is still hidden? Were those reactions in court shock or recognition? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Low Key Line for more deep dives into stories the world can't stop talking about.